Have you ever heard that all tour pros look pretty much the same at impact? Well, take a look at these screenshots of Tiger Woods and Jack Nicklaus. Certainly there are a lot of similarities, but there's no question that there are some pretty significant differences. Let's take a look at a couple others. Here we have Adam Scott on the left and Dustin Johnson. Certainly similar body positions in a lot of ways. Obviously different arm and hand and shaft positions. Let's take a look at a couple more. Going back in time, we got Ben Hogan on the left and Bobby Jones on the right. Again, similar but different. But what I see is one huge similarity amongst all these players and all great modern power players that I want to share with you. Perhaps an easier way to look at this is to compare it to the average golfer. Now, when you compare the greats to the average golfer, it's pretty easy to see there's a lot more glaring differences than there are similarities most often. But what's interesting to me is something that is kind of hard to see at first, but once you take a close look at it, it'll be a lot more clear. Let me show you what I'm talking about. If you draw an ellipse and you look at the curve of Tiger's body from his right ankle up to his left shoulder, you can almost form a smooth curve, an arc that goes roughly through the center of his leg, knee, femur, all the way up to his shoulder. Now, if you take this exact same arc and you put it on the average golfer, it doesn't quite line up the same. And what you'll find most often for the golfers who lack power, this same ellipse, the line will end up not on the shoulder, but closer to the head. Let's take a look at another one. Maybe this is just coincidence. So now I've got Adam Scott here, exact same ellipse, close to the shoulder, starting at the center of the ankle, center of the knee, up through the femur, close to the shoulder. And now I've got an average Joe over here. I kind of got to move the ellipse around to kind of make it work from the center of the ankle to get up through his knee. Again, you'll see the same shape end up closer to his head. And now, just to be clear, these are the exact same shape, size ellipse. So I've sized up the player to get it close so that there's similar heights in this. But you can see as we compare these to amateur golfers, we'll take Dustin Johnson in this case and an average Joe, center of the ankle, roughly the center of the ankle. You'll see that this ellipse tends to form a smooth arc that goes through the shoulder in powerful players, especially when compared to amateurs. We'll go old school. We'll take Ben Hogan here. You can again see this obvious curvature in the right leg as the hip is going to an extension, the right knee's moving forward. Again, the line goes through the shoulder. Now you might think, well, all tour players do this. Well, if you take a look at some hitters on tour who don't have the same hip action, here's an example of a tour player who's not known for his distance, but definitely known for his accuracy. And you can see this same ellipse going right up through the center of his bone structure of his right leg and up to his ear. And this seems to be very consistent. I'd love to know what you guys think about this. But again, we'll take Tiger. You can follow the same ellipse, center of the ankle, center of the bone structure, up toward the shoulder. We'll take our average Joe over here. You're going to see it looks like his lower body's just not really doing a whole heck of a lot, especially when you look at them side by side without the ellipses. It's very clear to see that the golfer on the left has run out of anything to hit with at the bottom, so the club's fully released, whereas Tiger's still able to continue to drive force into that shaft, and using the lower body is critical for this. And now if we look at yours truly on the left here, you'll see much the same motion. Compared to Tiger, I'm certainly no GOAT, but I follow the same principles. I try to do the same things in my swing and what I teach at Rotary Swing that the greats all did in their swings. And now let's look at one more amateur. You're going to see the same thing, the curve going up towards the ear. What does this all really mean? Let's take a look.
I've been studying the swings of the greats for more than 30 years now, and it continues to fascinate me to this day that how similar certain aspects of their golf swings were. And in today's day and age where the golf game has shifted to be almost entirely about power, it's crazy how much the modern power players look like the greats who played the game even 100 years ago. What's fascinating to me about this clip that I just showed you about this power arc or power curve that you see from the body is that almost all the greats look almost exactly the same. It's kind of crazy that how similar the same shape of that arc is. But also, it can be a bit misleading. Because when you look at it, if you didn't know anything about golf and you just saw all these guys in this position, this curved position, logic would say, if you just push them from this hip, that's how they would get there. And that's true in that sense, but is that how they got there? With the modern advent of technology like these force plates and 3D motion capture, we can tell exactly what the golfers are doing, what the greats are doing, what the powerful ball strikers are doing with their hips, with their core, with their shoulders. But the catch is, all of this technology is only so useful. I think when it comes to understanding the golf swing and really being able to take what you know and put it into real practice, there are three things that you have to have. First of all, you have to have an understanding, and that's where technology is great. Looking at all these graphs and data that we have access to now, it's awesome for understanding what is really happening in the swing and why. The second thing is, once you have this understanding, you have to then have a visual. What I mean by that is not just visualizing what you're supposed to look like in your mind, but also what you see in a mirror or on camera, to look at yourself and understand, okay, if I'm like this at impact and the goats are all like this, that's not right. I need to know what it's supposed to look like. But the third thing, and this is the part that I'm most interested in and I'm most fascinated by, is once you have an understanding and you have a visual, you know what it's supposed to look like, but you still can't do it. And that's probably where so many golfers are at right now. We really know down to the 10th of a degree exactly where the tour players are, what great ball strikers are doing in their swing. We know exactly what they're doing now. It's no longer a mystery or a secret. What we don't know is how to feel what they're feeling. And that's the third thing. Translating understanding. Once you have that, you can see it, but then you need to feel it. And that's the most important piece of the golf swing. And I also think it's perhaps the most difficult. And this has been what I've been working on for the last several years, is how to translate swing mechanics into feel. Now, feel is very subjective, but is there a universal feel in the golf swing? And what I mean by that is, there's been all sorts of attempts over the years to try and translate it into other things that we can relate to. Like, oh, it's a baseball throw, it's a sidearm throw, it's an underarm throw, it's a baseball swing, it's a tennis forehand. All of these things, there's truth in all of them. But what's really, really important is if we can understand what it really feels like to move our body. And this is the key. Most golfers, the arc that I just showed you, you can see very clearly the lower body, the legs, the hips, the core, all of it's not quite moving like the goats. The goats all look so similar that you can see this very distinct curve in their body, and most all amateurs look like they're running out a right arm, their hips haven't turned, and that's really kind of the magic. When you think about the biggest differences between tour pros, there's a couple things that tend to happen. One, they all tend to be in this same delivery position. I call it the goat delivery position, because all of the goats end up here. The hips are turned, weights transferred over, club shaft parallel, right arm still bent close to the body, left arm internally rotated and protracted. They're here. That's very, very consistent. That's why I call it the goat delivery position. They all do the same thing in almost the same way. Now the catch, and the second thing is the hips. And this is, if you were to take two things away from this video. One, all great, powerful, consistent ball strikers end up here as they get ready to deliver the club. And two, at impact, both butt cheeks. That, if you were to take 100 amateur golfers and 100 tour pros, you would see almost every single one of those tour pros with their hips wide open at impact, and every single amateur with their hips even square or just a little bit open at impact. That is one of the biggest differentiating factors and one of the hardest things to truly integrate into your golf swing, because there are so many things that go into it. Today, what I'm going to do in this next video is talk about how to start getting yourself in the position so that your hips will naturally start to get that open. Because if you're like the golfers I showed earlier, where you see this curve kind of going up their body toward their head because they're not rotated and they don't have enough pressure shifted over, then you're never ever going to get your hips open. It'll never happen. And if you don't learn how to get your hips open, you will be forced to fire your arms a little bit too soon in the downswing. That's why you see the golfers that I showed look like they're kind of running out a right arm to hit with at the bottom. There's nothing left because they didn't use their hips to transfer pressure over and create rotation to help move the arms down in the downswing. So in this next video, what I'm going to talk about and show you is what I believe it feels like to swing like the goats. Now, mechanically, what I'm going to show you, it's undeniable. The goats all do the same thing. We're going to talk about recentering. But the key is when it happens and what it feels like, and how to get your hips to rotate correctly in the backswing. Because if they don't rotate correctly in the backswing, there's almost 0% chance that they're going to rotate correctly in the downswing. The backswing is setting up the downswing, as you've always heard me say. So if you want to check out this next video, this is my interpretation, of my team's interpretation of what we've been working on to translate mechanics into feel, and the feel of the goats, what it feels like to swing like the greatest players and get your body moved into those positions. So click the link. I put one down in the description, and I've also pinned it at the comments at the top. If you're not a member of the site, don't worry, you can get a free 7-day trial. There's no credit card required. Just enter your email address in and you can watch this video as well and start trying to see what it feels like to swing like the greatest players of all time.